What if I told you that your deepest suffering, the pain that lingers long after the wound has healed, is something you don't just endure, but something you cling to? What if the reason you haven't let go of your pain isn't because you can't, but because a part of you won't? This isn't a message you're supposed to hear. It's not comforting. It's not polite. But it's one of the most powerful, disturbing insights Sigmund Freud ever gave us. And once you understand it, you might never look at your suffering the same way again. Freud didn't believe we were rational beings. He believed we were driven by unconscious forces, emotions, urges, memories buried so deep we often don't even know they're there. And pain, paradoxically, can become one of those forces. Not just something that happens to us, but something we internalize, identify with, even depend on. According to Freud, many of us unconsciously hold on to pain because it serves a psychological function. It gives us an identity. It gives us a story. And in a world that's chaotic, unpredictable, and full of existential uncertainty, even pain can feel like home. So here's the brutal truth. You may be more afraid of healing than of suffering.
Click subscribe to this channel to get more profound insights.
Let's take a moment to ask something impossible. What would you be without your pain? That heartbreak, that betrayal, that failure, that trauma, what would remain of you if all of that was stripped away? Would you feel empowered, or would you feel empty? You see, Freud believed that the ego, the conscious self, often builds itself on wounds. It says, I am the one who was hurt. I am the one who was abandoned. I am the one who failed. That story becomes a scaffold for identity. So when someone or something threatens to take the pain away through growth, forgiveness, love, or awareness, it's not just healing that happens. The self has to be rebuilt. And that, Freud warned, is terrifying. Because we mistake the pain for who we are. Here's where the philosophical stakes rise. Freud wasn't just a psychologist, he was a philosopher of the unconscious. He believed that pain, like everything else in the psyche, can become pleasurable. Not in a sadistic sense, but in a deeper, more disturbing way. He called this the repetition compulsion, the unconscious drive to return to old wounds, old patterns, old traumas. Why? Because they're familiar. Because they offer a script. Because they give us something to act out, something to blame, something to feel. So we replay the same relationships. We sabotage ours in the same ways. We chase the same ghosts. And all the while we tell ourselves, I just want to heal. But Freud would ask, do you? Or do you just want to keep the story alive, because without it you don't know who you are? This is where Freud forces us to face a philosophical contradiction. We say we want happiness, peace, and freedom. But we often act in ways that guarantee our suffering. Why? Because the unconscious mind is not interested in happiness. It's interested in coherence. It wants your inner world to make sense, even if that means keeping you trapped in a narrative of pain. If you grew up being ignored, your unconscious will seek situations where you are ignored again because it confirms your belief that you are unworthy. If you were betrayed, you might unconsciously attract people who betray you because it keeps the story alive. The pain becomes a mirror, reflecting back the identity you've unconsciously embraced. So how do we break this? How do we stop repeating pain and start living freely? And Freud's answer wasn't simple. He didn't believe in quick fixes. He believed in bringing the unconscious into consciousness. That means you have to become brutally honest with yourself. You have to ask, what part of me doesn't want to let go? What would I lose if I healed? What part of my identity is built on this suffering? These are terrifying questions, but they are also liberating, because when you begin to answer them, you reclaim your power not just to feel better, but to become someone new. Let's return to the question Freud forces us to confront. What would I lose if I healed? It seems absurd at first. Why would anyone not want to heal? We associate pain with suffering, and suffering with something we want to escape. But Freud understood that pain, especially emotional pain, can become deeply embedded in the psyche. It's not just an experience. It becomes a structure, a frame, a core around which everything else begins to orbit. And once that happens, the pain isn't just something we carry, it becomes something we are. Imagine a person who was emotionally neglected as a child. Their pain is real, their need for love was unmet. But over time, that experience calcifies into a belief, I am unlovable. That belief becomes the lens through which they see everything. They enter relationships already expecting abandonment. They interpret neutral behaviors as rejection. They sabotage intimacy before it can grow. And all the while they suffer. But Freud would say there's a hidden payoff. The belief I am unlovable may be painful, but it's stable. It's predictable. It gives the ego an identity. And in Freud's world, the ego clings to identity even at the cost of freedom. Ask yourself this: what belief about yourself has survived, even when reality tries to challenge it? Maybe you believe you're always the victim, or that you always mess things up, or that no one truly sees you. And even when someone does love you, or when something does go well, you find a way to distrust it, to distance from it, to return to the familiar pain. Freud would say this is your unconscious at work. It is not evil. It is not stupid. It is trying to protect you. Because the unconscious doesn't care about whether you're happy. It cares about consistency. It cares about what's familiar. And if pain is all you've known, then healing feels like a kind of death. This is the terrifying brilliance of Freud's insight. We don't just suffer, we repeat our suffering. He called this the compulsion to repeat. It's why abuse survivors often find themselves in abusive relationships. It's why people from chaotic families recreate chaos in their adult lives. It's why we reenact the same stories over and over, hoping unconsciously to resolve them. But here's the thing, you cannot resolve an old wound by repeating it. Repetition just deepens the groove. Freud believed that in order to escape the compulsion to repeat, we must confront it. We must drag it into the light. We must name the story we are living, and then ask the most dangerous question of all: what if I stop believing it? But that question opens a void. If I am not the person who was hurt, who am I? If I am not the one who always fails, what do I do when I succeed? If I am not the one who is unlovable, how do I accept real love? You see, letting go of pain means letting go of the identity we built around it. That's the true cost of healing. It's not just about feeling better, but it's about becoming someone else. And Freud warned us, the ego resists this with everything it has. It fears the unknown. It fears the blank page. It fears the radical freedom that comes when the old story crumbles and nothing is left but choice. And yet this is the only real path to healing. You cannot change your life while holding on to the identity that created it. You cannot move forward while dragging your past like a ghost behind you. Freud's brutal truth is this: you must choose to let go, not once, not lightly, but fiercely, daily. And that choice will feel like loss, like grief, like death, because it is. The death of who you thought you had to be in order to survive, and the death of the excuses, the death of the narrative that made you the center of your own tragedy. And in that death, something astonishing happens. You begin to live. Let's get practical. How do you actually begin this process? Freud believed the first step was awareness. You must recognize your patterns, track them, see them not as accidents, but as signals. Start journaling your repeated emotional reactions. When do you feel most triggered? What stories do you tell yourself in those moments? What old wounds are being reopened? This is not about blame, it's about data. You are excavating the architecture of your unconscious. You are becoming an archaeologist of your own mind. Next, you must begin to challenge the beliefs that rise out of your pain. Freud called this working through. It means confronting the belief I'm unworthy, I'm doomed to be alone, I ruin everything, and asking, where did this come from? Who gave this to me? Is it actually true? This is where the real battle begins. Because your unconscious will throw everything it has at you: memories, feelings, fear, shame. It will try to convince you that healing is betrayal, that letting go of pain means letting go of the people who hurt you, the safety of your old identity, even the love you once begged for. But here's what Freud knew: healing is not betrayal. It is integration. It is taking the broken pieces of your past and choosing to build something new, something stronger, something more conscious. It is not forgetting what happened. It is becoming someone who is no longer defined by it. There's a moment in every healing journey where you face a fork in the road. One path is familiar. It's lined with the same old excuses, the same old pain, the same old story. The other path is blank. It's terrifying. It's silent. There's no applause on that path. No one to tell you what to do. It's just you and the raw material of your life and the terrifying freedom to create something new. That's the path Freud invites us to take. But it requires something most people never develop: emotional courage. Emotional courage is the ability to sit with discomfort without escaping it, to feel pain without becoming it, to be honest with yourself without collapsing. Freud believed that most people avoid this work by projecting. They blame others. They become obsessed with fixing external problems. They distract themselves with drama, addiction, overwork, or even constant self-improvement. But all of these are defenses, ways to avoid the terrifying act of turning inward. So I want to ask you something now, and I want you to sit with it, not just intellectually, but emotionally. What pain have you turned into a home? What suffering have you internalized so deeply that it feels like part of your identity? And what would it cost you right now to let it go? Maybe it would mean admitting that someone who hurt you will never apologize. Maybe it would mean forgiving yourself for something shameful. Maybe it would mean giving up the comfort of being a victim and stepping into the terrifying responsibility of being whole. Freud would say this is the threshold of transformation. When you can stand in that discomfort and choose to let go anyway, that's when you begin to reclaim your life. But there's one more layer to this, and it's the most radical of all. Freud believed that healing is not about returning to a previous state of innocence. It's not about becoming untouched or unscarred. It's about becoming conscious. It's about using your suffering as fuel for awareness. When you do this, the pain doesn't vanish, but it stops owning you. It becomes part of your story, but no longer the author of it. This is what makes Freud's philosophy so powerful and so terrifying. He doesn't promise relief, he promises truth. And truth is not always kind, but it is the only thing strong enough to set you free. So, if you've been dragging your pain behind you like a chain, maybe it's time to ask, what would it mean to put it down? Not because it didn't matter, not because it didn't hurt, but because it's time to grow into someone who no longer needs it to feel real. That's the choice Freud leaves us with. A brutal choice, but a beautiful one. You can keep suffering and repeat your story. Or you can face the pain, grieve it fully, and begin the terrifying, liberating work of becoming someone new. The unconscious will fight you. Your ego will resist. But somewhere deeper than that, in the place where your true self has been waiting, you already know the answer. And it's this: you are not your pain. You are the one who survived it. And now you have a choice. Who will you become when you finally let it go? Because healing isn't passive. It's an act of rebellion, a declaration of war against the identity that trauma tried to give you. And that is your liberation.